In a peaceful suburban neighborhood, where every lawn was trimmed with precision and each mailbox stood in perfect uniformity, there was one person who stood out: Alex. A free-spirited young professional, Alex had recently inherited a piece of land from his late uncle. But unlike the picture-perfect, meticulously maintained cul-de-sac, his yard was a flourishing wildflower garden. It wasn't neglected, it was intentional. A deliberate effort to attract bees, butterflies, and a little slice of natural beauty. However, his relaxed approach to life clashed dramatically with the neighborhood's rigid obsession with order. And that clash? It had a name: Karen. Karen wasn't just any neighbor. No, she was the self-appointed enforcer of all things proper. With a clipboard always in hand and a perpetual look of disapproval fixed on her face, she made it her mission to ensure the entire neighborhood conformed to her exacting standards of perfection. From the very moment Alex moved in, Karen had locked onto him like a heat-seeking missile. First, it was his wildflowers. She labeled them a weed infestation. Then, she took issue with the color of his mailbox, calling it an eyesore. It was as if Alex's mere presence in the neighborhood offended her very being. Before we continue, help us reach 10,000 subscribers. Your support means everything. Hit that subscribe button now. But the real trouble began one bright, sunny morning. Alex was on his porch, sipping coffee, soaking in the peaceful chirping of birds, when suddenly, a police car pulled up to his driveway. Confused, Alex stood up as an officer cautiously approached. Morning, officer. What's going on?" Alex asked, baffled. The officer hesitated, glancing at a notepad before speaking. "We received a report about a hazardous structure on your property." Alex blinked. His what now? He turned his head, eyes landing on his small, perfectly fine garden shed. And then it hit him: Karen. Of course. From across the street, Karen stood, arms folded, a smug smirk on her face. "I told you, officer," she declared, her voice dripping with self-righteousness. "This landowner refuses to comply with neighborhood standards. That shed is a safety concern." Alex almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. A safety concern? His garden shed? But as ridiculous as it was, he knew this was only the beginning. Karen wasn't just a nosy neighbor. She was on a full-fledged mission to make his life miserable. At first, her campaign started small, passive-aggressive notes taped to his door. Sloppy, handwritten warnings about how his yard was an eyesore and how it was lowering property values. Alex found them so ridiculous that he actually pinned a few onto his fridge like trophies. But Karen? Oh no, she wasn't satisfied with just leaving nasty notes. She wanted action. The first major escalation happened when Alex decided to host a small backyard barbecue. Nothing crazy, just a few friends, some grilled burgers, soft music, and good conversation. But right when the burgers were coming off the grill, guess what?
Yep.
A police car pulled into the driveway, lights flashing. Confused, Alex walked up to the officer. Is something wrong?" "We got a noise complaint," the officer said flatly. And there, standing just a few feet away on the sidewalk, was Karen. Arms crossed, lips pursed. "They've been blasting music for hours. It's disrupting the peace," she exclaimed. Alex glanced over at his tiny Bluetooth speaker, playing music so softly you could barely hear it over the sound of the wind. The officer clearly saw through the nonsense and dismissed the complaint almost immediately. But Karen? She still had that smug expression, like she'd won some sort of battle. And it didn't stop there. Oh no, her ridiculous antics escalated daily. She filed a complaint with the city, claiming Alex's wildflower garden was a breeding ground for pests, and demanded it be removed. A city inspector was sent out to investigate, only to find that Alex's garden was completely compliant and actually beneficial to the environment. Karen was furious at being shut down, but she didn't give up. One morning, Alex woke up, looked out his window, and what did he see?
Karen.
Standing on the sidewalk, holding a tape measure. She was actually measuring the height of his grass, documenting every inch, like a detective gathering evidence. Then came Halloween. Alex loved Halloween. He went all out, Pumpkins, skeletons, a fog machine for extra spookiness. The neighborhood kids loved it. But Karen? She was livid. Marching over, she pointed at his decorations like they were a crime scene. "These pumpkins are not regulation size," she screeched. "And that fog machine? A fire hazard." Then she did what she did best. She called 911. Again. At this point, Karen's antics weren't just Alex's problem anymore. Other neighbors were beginning to take notice. She had tried to enforce her ridiculous rules on others before, but Alex had become her main target. The police calls, the city complaints, the constant harassment, it was all taking a toll. Alex had stopped being amused. Enough was enough. What Karen didn't realize was that her obsessive need for control was about to spectacularly backfire. At first, Alex tried to be the bigger person. He ignored her escalating nonsense, focusing on enjoying his home. But when she called 911 for the third time in a month, claiming that his string lights were blinding her at night, Alex knew he couldn't just let this slide anymore. This wasn't just some nosy neighbor anymore. Karen was actively trying to make his life miserable. And now, it was time to fight back. Alex didn't just plan to win. He planned to make sure Karen's obsession with control came back to bite her. And it all started with a little humor. To be continued.